All you, baby. All you, Eric.
All right, guys. Well, we're getting started. Looks like we got some picks coming in. Alex, tell us about your first pick.
Man, Ezekiel Elliott. You can see my projections for the season on awesemo.com. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. I think that he's my top projected pick. The only question is how much, if any, is he going to play this season?
Yeah.
I'm willing to chance it, though, because the winner gets $1,000 for charity, I think.
$1,500, man.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
All right. Academic Games of Leagues of America is going to love this Ezekiel Elliott pick, man.
Alex, it's your money. You should know how much
Just going with Zeke, no concerns, feel good about the contract situation. I mean, you had a lot of options there.
Yeah, don't remind me, man. It's tough, but I think a lot of people have holdouts, and very few end up not playing the season. And I think Dallas without Zeke is going to be terrible, so they're going to really need him this year.
Yep. Cool. Let's see, looking at some other picks coming in. Alex, when it circles back to you in the second round, I probably don't want to say it before it happens, but
that's true. I got burned last time, man. People assume my picks on the live stream here.
Yeah. There's always a strategy, right? Just never know. I see Hopkins went a little early. Some drafts he's in different spots. 3 seems.
Well, that's Manny Laura. He's my co-host on Sirius XM Fantasy Awesemo Radio, and he stands by drafting wide receivers early. Always. That's his deal. By the way, thanks to everybody for joining us. This is the first annual Awesemo celebrity charity event, and we got some awesome names today. Evan Silva, the real Lisa Ann, Christopher Harris, JJ Zacharyson, and Roberto Luongo. If you follow hockey, Roberto Luongo in the room, baby, drafting with us today. Manny Laura, of course, Alex Baker himself, Nolan, our boy Nolan, Ben Rasa. We got a lot here, Alex. There's a whole lot of solid names that know a whole lot about football.
Yeah, I'm pretty nervous, man, because this is the only X-Pro League we're doing, so we got to make it count here.
Yeah. And by the way, I think everybody gets some money in some form donated to charity. So it's a win-win situation.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point here. Of course, this is about more than charity. I mean, charity is great, but this is about competing against some of the best fantasy people in the world. So it's going to matter a lot.
I had the draft number 1 overall, which is brutal because you don't pick again for 700 picks, but Saquon Barkley's a decent anchor to have. Now it just depends on who's going to come back around. Yahoo has Nick Chubb ranked number 4 overall. Number 4 overall. Eric, he's still on the board.
Yeah, it's interesting. Chubb, I think it depends on what site you use. It might depend on, how the Browns fared that week, what Baker Mayfield, maybe what he said in the news that week,
Yeah. There he goes, too. Roberto Luongo just snagged him 19th overall after George Kittle.
Yeah. Unbelievable. Tight end going that early. I mean, we know Kelsey's going that early. But, yeah, I'm surprised to see him picked that late. I don't know if people have fears about Kareem Hunt, second half of the year perhaps.
Yeah, that's the big thing is – are you really going to look at someone in Kareem Hunt after, let's say Nick Chubb has a huge start to the season and he's carrying this team on his back alongside Baker Mayfield, Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry, David Njoku, all of them. And you say, oh, no, screw it. We're not going to – no, we'll give him some rest. I know that's the concern that many have, but if he's off to a monster start and he's getting 20-plus touches a game, I just have a tough time believing he's not going to keep getting the work. So Nick Chubb, 19th or 20, I think is a phenomenal pick. And especially with Duke Johnson gone, you could see him more involved in the passing game as well.
Yeah. And there's a name that you bring up who has interesting upside later in the draft. I'm sure his name will get brought up soon, but there's Duke Johnson with Lamar Miller, going down last week for the year. Big opportunity for someone like Duke.
Yeah. Alex, are you on Duke Johnson in this Houston role now, being that Lamar Miller went down? He's out for the season with an ACL tear, and Duke Johnson has never really been a 3-down back.
I think I like him, but this is not a salary cap situation. I mean, in DFS, probably be all over him week 1. But I think you're right. There are some concerns about maybe his usage not being as high as some of the other league backs. I think he's clearly their best back for passing, and there's big question marks. There's a lot of talk about, are they going to sign another running back before the season starts? And with a running back that's mostly running and not catching passes, it's pretty much plug and play. So I think I have him somewhere in the 4th or 5th round.
4th or 5th. Yeah. He jumped 100 spots, ADP spots over the past week.
Incredible. Yep.
The problem though is, who are you going to draft? Who would you draft him ahead of? Do you draft him ahead of? You're not drafting him ahead of David Montgomery, right? Or Josh Jacobs. Like, which of these running backs do you look at and say, I would definitely take Duke Johnson ahead of? Would you take him ahead of Carson or Ingram?
So I think Carson's interesting. This is a PPR league. He's not really a PPR guy, so maybe there would be an argument there. Probably not as secure in his role as Carson. Ingram, I'm not too bullish on this season. I mean, he's playing an offense where the quarterback runs a ton, and that's going to take a lot of usage away from him. So I think that I think also, being on the Ravens, that's going to be not as productive a spot as being on the Saints. So I think I'm not as bullish as some other people on him.
So 3rd round here, 4th pick in the 3rd round. One name that just came off the board that got my wheels turning was Adam Thielen, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts on comparing him to someone like his teammate Stephon Diggs. A lot of rankings have them similar. I think it's what do you like personally, but interested to hear what you think in comparing the two, Thielen and Diggs.
Yeah, I don't know about Alex, but I still have Thielen over Diggs, and there are certain people that have Diggs over Thielen. Matter of fact, Chris Spags, who's doing the draft with us, going to be providing a lot of NFL content for awesomemode.com this season and last season, of course. He had Diggs and Thielen as bust candidates this year.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, he had some solid reasoning to it. I'd advise anyone to check it out. It's completely free at awesomemode.com. It's the wide receivers, bust, sleepers, and breakouts. But Thielen, to me, is still going to be a high-volume guy. Kirk Cousins is still going to have a lot of volume. But I guess, Alex, the question is, last year their run game was hamstrung by the loss of Dalvin Cook for a bunch of weeks. And even when he was in there, he was limited to 10, 15 touches at times. Do you think that takes away from the passing game and the passing volume, which saw Kirk Cousins attempt over 600 passes last year?
Let me get back to you in a second here because I'm on the clock.
Keep asking him questions.
Last time.
Yeah.
This is a tough pick for me here. Not exactly sure where I should go. So, all right. I think that there is concern with Cousins, probably them running the ball a little bit more this year, but I think a lot of that was more game flow in the second half of the season.
You didn't pick. Go. You didn't pick.
Oh, I thought if you star the guy, it auto picks them, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah, my fault. I wanted to make sure you didn't lose your pick.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I did lose my pick a few times last time.
So did I.
I'm still getting used to the season-long thing. But,
I know.
So I think that Thielen, I mean, he had insane season. He had a streak of 100-yard games last year. And I think they switched offensive coordinators, and there was this narrative built that maybe they're running the ball more. But I think it was more a game flow situation than really a strategy. So I think we're going to see similar production to last year, maybe just a hair down from that kind of anomaly where he got 100 yards every single week.
I don't disagree with you. What did he have? 8 straight 100-yard games? 9?
I don't know, man. I didn't have enough in daily fantasy. Whoever had him over that stretch probably made it a killing.
Every week I said, he won't do it this week. I'm going to come in underweight. And then he did it every single week. So it was kind of like Alvin Kamara doing the same thing. Was that last year or 2 seasons back?
Yeah. And in 16 games, there's going to be a couple of guys that have some like crazy streaks. And that's part of season long is you got to figure out who's legit and who maybe just got lucky.
All right, Eric, who's jumping off the page at you? Any wild picks yet?
Well, I got to say one thing that I wouldn't say wild at this point, but interested to see Robert Woods go off the board before Brandon Cooks. I got to be honest. Maybe it's just me personally. I'm a big Brandon Cooks fan. Big play potential. Year after year, he's 1,000 yards. But he's bounced around teams. This is his chance to be in a second year with the same offense. Had a good first year with LA. So while I do like Robert Woods and interested to hear others' thoughts around it, I am surprised to see him go ahead of Brandon Cooks.
I am too, only because Cooper Kupp's back in the mix. They're going to spread it out. There's still going to be plenty of opportunity, and they're going to be a high-powered offense. But I'd rather have the guy that has the big play potential. It's not to say that Woods doesn't, but I love having someone in Brandon Cooks who, is a 1,000-yard receiver, right? Coming off of a 1,200-yard season, only 5 touchdowns, but it's a volatile statistic. I wouldn't be surprised to see more touchdowns this season for him. And the big thing is, someone might look at Robert Woods and say, well, yeah, but he's a bigger volume guy. Not really. Brandon Cooks had 80 receptions on 116 targets last year, while Robert Woods had 86 on 131. So it wasn't really an astronomical boost for Woods over Cooks. I'll take the guy that can break off 80-yard touchdowns every week. Yep.
That's what wins in fantasy. Looking at Julian Edelman just came off the board. That's another name that I'm interested to see how he performs this year. With Rob Gronkowski, we know that's Tom's safety blanket for a long time. Edelman, interested to see how his numbers project. Also adding in the names like Demaryius Thomas, Josh Gordon. Brady's got a lot of options there, but Edelman seems to be one of those PPR monsters year over year. And with Gronk out, I'm interested to see how his production fares.
Alex, where are you at on Edelman? Are you high on him this year? And does Josh Gordon affect it?
I think he's pretty good this year. I mean, I have him ranked 31 in my overall board, so I think that picking him in the 4th round is pretty good. Let me make my pick here. I'm trying to decide between a few guys. Galladay, Hilton are the main guys, and then I saw Melvin Gordon lower. I'm thinking maybe I should take the risk because that's a pretty good player, but I think I need a wide receiver, so I'm gonna go.
It'd be tough. I could imagine after taking someone like Zeke early on, you maybe want some stability in that lineup with someone that is signed with a team.
That's right. Yeah, maybe if I go for 1 for 2, it wouldn't be that
bad. So Galladay, that's another offense. Just Detroit in general. What's to make of it? People are high on Kerryon Johnson this year. Theo Riddick's finally out of that system, so that opens up some catches for running backs. Between Galladay and Marvin Jones, Galladay seems to be the front runner. Alex, you seem to like him. How do you stack rank him against his teammate Marvin Jones?
I think that Galladay, he was a monster last year. Detroit wasn't that good at offense, so he really didn't thrive as much as some other big names. But this is rookie season, and I think that he's clearly the number one option with Golden Tate off this roster. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how he does this year, and I feel confident that I have a number one option. Marvin Jones, more of a deep guy, so I think that Galladay is going to have to do a lot of the work.
So now that we're 4 rounds through almost, take a look at how some of our celebs are doing. Evan Silva goes Odell Beckham, Tyreek Hill, Julian Edelman, Devontae Freeman. 3 wide receivers, 1 running back. You got Pat Mayo, Michael Thomas, Josh Jacobs, Chris Carson. He scooped up Kelly, so he's got 1 receiver, a tight end, and 2 running backs. Lisa Ann. Lisa Ann does fantasy, by the way, on tonight, 10 p.m. Eastern time on SiriusXM Fantasy. Robert Woods, James Conner, Joe Mixon, Mark Ingram, Chris Harris. He's coming on after us. I'll be with him. Alex will be with him doing the post-draft recap show. Julio Jones, Antonio Brown, Stefan Diggs, and Sonia Michelle. And our boy J.J. Zacharyson, Mike Evans, Alvin Kamara, and Damian Williams. His 4th pick is coming up. Alex, who's the best team of them so far?
Man, that's a tough question. I think these guys are really kind of, being season-long experts and drafting the way they are. Evan and Christopher Harris both taking 3 wide receivers already. That's really cementing this idea of replacement value in my mind, because a lot of times waiver wire, you can get some really good running backs, but you can never get a really good wide receiver, or almost never. So I think it makes a lot of sense that Evan went 3 wide receiver, Christopher went 3 wide receiver, and just a lot of wide receivers off the board already.
Last but not least, you've got Mahomes, Galladay, Elliott, and George Kittle. Feel good about all 4 of them?
I feel really good about them individually, but I feel like maybe I'm not getting the position per round ideally, because all the good wide receivers are off the board now. So I'm going to be at a disadvantage facing guys like Evan and Christopher Harris, where maybe they get that waiver pickup, but that's a really good running back. And Academic Games Leagues of America needs this money, so I'm hoping that that I can beat them.
Yeah, on a flip side, some folks going wide receiver heavy, others going running back heavy. Nolan grabbing McCaffrey, Gurley, Fournette, and then waiting all the way to grab T.Y. Hilton, who seems like everybody's trying to avoid Colts at this point. So interested to see how his team stacks up with a heavy RB situation, but looks like wide receiver could be a gap. Depends on how much you believe in Jacoby Brissett. So we will see how that plays out for him.
I'm in a tough position here because there's no wide receivers that really stick out in this spot. I've already got 2 running backs. I just took O.J. Howard. And I don't know what to do. So I guess we're going to go with David Montgomery. We're just going to have to load up on running backs. I don't feel good about it, but here we go. David Montgomery. He's going to be a stud in Chicago, Alex.
Go for it.
I hope you're right, man. Oh, well, I hope that you're not right for the sake of this league, but I'm a fan, I'm hoping he's a big performer this year. J.J. Zacharyson got his 3rd wide receiver. It seems like everyone's just locking down that position already.
I haven't been able to. I mean, it's not that I haven't been able to, but I just and it's a 3 wide receiver league. I totally understand why everyone's doing it, but in a weird way, I feel like if I have to wait, I don't mind getting some of these receivers later, not late in the draft, but a little bit later. It is a relatively deep position, and I won't rattle off the names right now. Wouldn't want Evan Silva to steal them from me listening to the stream. But I feel like there are a lot of guys that will still have value there in the 6th and 7th rounds. And I don't know, Eric, let's hope I'm right.
Yeah, you know what? It's interesting. I think people fall one way or the other, but wide receiver has been a position that's shown year over year that there's kind of that top tier, and then you can kind of figure it out. If you kind of wait later in the draft, there's some teams that or maybe on the rise that might have some wideouts that are going to see a lot of targets. We know volume is important, but they may not be on the sexiest team. So you might be able to stick around and get them a little bit late, as opposed to some players that might be on a sexier team. I saw Sonia Michelle come off the board, running back from New England, who I think a lot of people are excited about just because he plays for the Patriots. We know the Patriots spread the ball around, especially with the running backs. James White's always got a big part of that offense. You know, there's the running back, their third-round draft pick that they used, his name, Damien Harris, I believe it is. So we'll see Michelle, you know, by week 4, week 5, if he's getting the bulk of the carries or if he's, you know, dropping down a little bit.
I think one of the biggest picks to monitor, excuse me, in this draft and all of the drafts is, well, I'll give you a couple. Where does Melvin Gordon go?
Yeah.
He just went 52nd overall. And with the news of Andrew Luck retiring, now you're seeing guys like T.Y. Hilton go from late second, early third round, dropping down. I saw him taken 70th yesterday in a draft, and that was by someone that got kicked out of the draft room and auto-picked him. So I don't know how long it would have gone until he was drafted. Eric Ebron being another one.
Yep.
Marlon Mack is another guy who saw just a precipitous drop in ADP. The quarterback doesn't just affect your wide receivers and your pass catchers. When you have Jacoby Brissett unable to move the football, and I don't know if Frank Reich's going to be able to fix that, you're going to put yourself in a bad spot playing from behind, and the running back position takes a huge blow as well.
Absolutely. You know, I happened to be at that Colts-Bears preseason game Saturday night. It was an interesting mood in the stadium around the third, fourth quarter when the news broke about Andrew Luck retiring. A lot of unhappy people in the state of Indiana. Hope the best for him as a player and his future, endeavors, but definitely leaves that team and that roster and that city in a tough predicament looking into week and a half to prepare for this regular season.
So Alex, you have the projections at awesomemode.com. This is your first iteration of seasonal projections, right?
Yeah, I took the model that I used for daily or weekly NFL projections, and I just apply it to season long. It's the same thing, except there's 16 games. So feel pretty confident that if you use these projections that are free on the site, you're going to do pretty well in these leagues.
So what do you see happening to Hilton and Ebron and Marlon Mack and the entirety of this Indianapolis Colts offense?
I think that Mack and Hilton are still going to be fantasy producers, but I don't expect as much passing with Brissett instead of Luck. So I think that Hilton will definitely take a big decrease in value. I'm not big on Ebron because he's competing with Doyle. I feel like Doyle, when he's healthy, gets more of the work. So I wouldn't draft either of those guys to start with, and I like him even less with Brissett.
So there we see Duke Johnson finally coming off the board. Was the 59th overall pick. We talked about him earlier. We see a couple tight ends that have just come off the board. Alex, what are you thinking about the tight end position just in general this year? Last season was very interesting, very slim pickings, I thought. And with some key contributors back from injuries, the likes of Hunter Henry, the likes of Delaney Walker. What are you thinking about that position just in general this year? Are you waiting? Are you going early? What are your thoughts?
I think that Lisa made a really good choice of Evan Ingram, and I have him ranked 44th on my board, so that would be the 4th round, and she got him in the 5th round, so that's an incredible bargain. This isn't sorted by fantasy projection for me because it is so much harder to get a tight end that produces at the end of the draft, and we've seen a lot of those tight ends have come off the board already. So guys like Evan, Roberto Luongo, Christopher Harris, I mean, these guys know what they're doing, so maybe they have some sleeper picks in store, but
sure,
it's going to be hard to replace a guy like Evan Ingram or Jared Cook.
Yeah, the top three at the position are like head and shoulders above everybody else. And then it kind of falls off to like, I have Ingram, Hunter Henry, who just went to Evan Silva. There you go, Alex. I have Hunter Henry, Ingram, and OJ Howard in no real specific order as that next tier of tight ends. And I really like them. After that, you see a bit of a nosedive with guys like Vance McDonald, Austin Hooper. I think you could maybe argue that Jared Cook's in that second tier, but it definitely, you definitely see a drop. And I went with OJ Howard as my fifth pick. I love him. I love his athleticism. The only thing I worry about, Eric, I don't know if you saw that Tampa Bay last preseason game, but Jameis Winston was sacked 5 times in the first half. I mean, sometimes we don't pay enough attention to that. I don't care how much talent you have or what your scrambling ability is. I mean, if your offensive line is breaking down on every single drop back, it's a problem. So I love him this year, but it's definitely a risk.
Yeah, and I mean, gosh, you look at a team like Tampa Bay, passing the ball, sure, they have weapons, but they got really questionable running back situation. I don't think anybody feels good about that, coupled with, to your point, some offensive line challenges. Temper those expectations, I think, in Tampa.
Oh, Alex just took Christian Kirk. Oh, man. That was who I needed. That was who I needed to help myself out, but no dice. That's a
Sorry,
good.
Man. You told me you had some wide receivers waiting the later round. So I started looking at that board. I'm like, I know Laffy is big on Kyler Murray, and he's going to pick Christian Kirk if I don't get him.
Well, I'm glad I made you happy.
Yeah, so,
it sucks.
Alex, if you don't mind, since we're well past it, I wanted to revisit that first round a little bit. Now, you went with Zeke early. There's constant talk about first round. Where do you go? What's important to you? We saw guys like Hopkins go early. You know, where do you rank if you just had to split it between Kamara and Barkley? You know, if you had to pick one or the other, you're maybe looking at that second pick overall, depending on who goes first. How do you stack rank those two and why?
I think Barkley is probably the number one pick for me if I had that spot in the order, because there is no uncertainty that he's going to be a huge high-usage player in Eli Manning run offense where, you know, he's going to get a lot of dump offs. He's going to run the ball a ton. Ezekiel Elliott, he's in a better offense, so I think there's more potential to put up touchdowns and stuff. But I think that the uncertainty about how many games he's going to play is worth considering, and that's why I think he dropped down to me at 7. But I'm willing to take a chance. I think people are thinking about Le'Veon Bell last year and how they got burned. Yep. And so many times people do holdouts and then they get what they want, or they're bluffing. And there's a very small chance I think he doesn't play a majority, if not all, of the season.
So I'll give you something good here. I mentioned that Manny, Laura, and I do the Sirius XM show together. You talk about bluffing. When he says he's not drafting running backs, my God, is he serious? He is 6 rounds through without a running back and already has a quarterback. So he's got Hopkins, Thielen, Kupp, Zach Ertz, Calvin Ridley, and Matt Ryan. That is something.
Yeah, I mean, Matt Ryan, Atlanta, that offense in general has been pretty consistent. So I could see, that pick. Doubling down with Calvin Ridley is interesting. Hey, some people like that zero running back approach. They can wait. I think Alex made the point earlier that oftentimes you can find people on the waiver wire in year-long and season-long leagues. So it seems to be his approach. What are we thinking? Gosh, it looks like Will Fuller finally off the board. I liked him. Alex, what do you think about that Houston passing game? There's Kiki Kuti, which is a hyped-up player last year when Fuller went down. There's obviously Hopkins, but, how are you feeling about Fuller? How are you feeling about Kuti looking into this season?
I think these are all great players with Kuti, Fuller, Hopkins. And I think there's going to be a problem with just too many mouths to feed. Last year, Fuller and Coutinho missed a majority of the games, respectively. I don't think they played in any games together, but I could be wrong. Maybe at the very start of the season. And I think that with all three of them back, this is going to be too much competition for the ball, and there's only so many times you can throw it. And I think that Houston also runs the ball more than your average team.
Yep.
Maybe that'll change with all these guys that are so good. But these are guys that are drafting at much higher positions than their ADP.
Let me play devil's advocate for 1 second. If Duke Johnson isn't capable of shouldering the load, they might have to go to the air more than they would even like. Now, I'm not saying it'll be efficient, but we've never seen Duke Johnson in a role where he can really shoulder a full workload. And I don't even know if I can't imagine they're going to fully use him in that capacity. It seems that they either have to pick someone up, Jay Ajayi's still out there, or they're going to mix in some other backs in this backfield. But I don't know. It seems like it could be a tough go for Duke Johnson to handle, 15 plus carries a game.
Absolutely. I think Evan said it best. Evan Silva, he said that the farther out you draft, the more skill is involved because you have to predict these situations. And it's such a big question mark. Like, it's only been a couple of days since Lamar Miller got out for the season. And there's still a week and a half before the season starts. So are the Texans going to make a move before that? And that's going to dramatically affect the whole team.
No, you're absolute. I had an argument with a buddy of mine the other day. He said, how could you draft a team in July? And I get it, but there is an element of skill there because you're predicting and projecting out where you think players are going to be. Of course, injuries notwithstanding, but actually, I really like this guy. I think he's good. I can get him in the 13th round in July, but if you're drafting now, this guy might be going in the 5th round. And we've seen that happen with a lot of guys without even talking about injuries.
Yeah. I just see Kenyon Drake taken off the board. He might be a guy if you're, waiting on a running back late. We know there's going to be some competition there, at the running back position. But, going into the season, he is the lead back. Not a great team, but probably getting, your 15 touches a game. So, someone like Drake, maybe not terrible at, 78th off the board. If you've spent the first few rounds loading up on wide receivers or tight ends, QB, someone like him could be a good option. Guys, so we're getting down kind of the nitty gritty of the draft here, where everybody kind of has a few people they have in mind. See Sammy Watkins. That is someone that I think a lot of people are probably excited about, especially if Tyreek Hill, he had some issues before the season started. It's since been squashed. But as you look at that Kansas City offense as a whole, a lot of mouths to feed. You had a guy like Watkins, you got Hill, you got Kelsey. Alex, if you were to pick one of those weapons, Patrick Mahomes aside, who are you targeting for your team, Kansas City wise? I think it's probably one of those teams where you want a piece of that pie. Is there one slice in particular that you have your eye on as far as Kansas City Chiefs players go?
Well, I've drafted 2 already, so I'm big on them. Mahomes is a guy. I think I messed this up because the guy I want at quarterback that's below or that's still on the board. There's a guy that I really like at quarterback that's still on the board that could have gotten that pick. Maybe Amari Cooper or something with that pick. But these are like some of the best players at the position. Kelsey and Mahomes, clearly the best options at quarterback and tight end. Hill being a really good option. Watkins, I'm hoping this is a pick where he's a pretty good player. He'd be a good fill-in for a bye week or something like that. Mm-hmm. But he's a really talented first-round pick. Tyreek Hill, if for some reason he was out and injured, Watkins would be a huge fantasy asset. So I'm just going upside here.
Yep.
One thing that stands out in this draft so far is Baker Mayfield's still on the board. When you a lot of times you will see guys not draft quarterbacks early, especially in a league like this or a season like this where the position is unusually deep. I mean, if you're in a 14-team league, you could find a quarterback that you feel good about, and you could be the guy that takes the 14th quarterback in the draft. You could take the 17th and probably still feel good about it. But Baker Mayfield's still on the board, and he was ranked. His ADP was up there and especially after Andrew Luck went down. You're talking about a guy that was being drafted as the third or fourth quarterback. He's still there, and it makes you wonder how much does, not in this league, not with people that know exactly what they're doing, but it makes you wonder how much preseason performance can affect a person's value, because that last performance from Baker Mayfield had people shook, and all it was one half of football.
Yeah, I guess everybody has their own beliefs about the preseason, right? You always kind of wonder, who are they competing against? Are those guys going to be even on the roster? Are they going to be starting players, come week one? But yeah, there is some stock that you should probably put into it. And Baker, I mean, everybody is on that bandwagon right now, the Browns bandwagon, which has been empty for years and years. But he's a guy that some drafts they're taking him high. I guess depends on what you like, what's important to you. I did see a name that I found interesting to still be around, actually, considering the Melvin Gordon situation, was Austin Eckler. Alex, I don't know what your thoughts around him are. He's another guy that could have a ton of value early on, may fall down a little bit if that Gordon deal works out. What are your thoughts around a guy like Austin Eckler?
Man, I'm kicking myself for not taking him. I was hoping maybe he'd be around in the next round, but I mean, Evan is way too sharp for that, clearly.
Yeah.
I think if Melvin Gordon doesn't end up on the Chargers roster, which is a high likelihood, we saw last year that Eckler got workhorse back role duties when they went to England. It was a game that not many people saw because it was early in the morning. Then Eckler got hurt, and then it was kind of a committee with the remaining guys, with Justin Jackson being the lead back. But I think there's a strong likelihood that if Gordon doesn't play for the Chargers, then Eckler will be a feature back for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, guys, getting someone that could be a feature back in the 90s, 90 to 100 seems like a steal, especially on a good team like San Diego. They'll have plenty of opportunities to score. I think Eckler is definitely an interesting guy. And I don't know one other name that you were talking QBs earlier. I don't know if he's come off the board. Did I miss Dak Prescott? Is he still available?
Yeah, and he should be for a while. It's such a deep position. I mean, you've got Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, who Alex has very high in his projections, and I agree with it. I take that running upside all day long. Jameis, I'd take over him. Wilson, there's a good amount of guys that I would probably draft ahead of Dak Prescott at this point. It's such a deep position. I think it's the deepest we've seen the position in forever, which just gives more reason, if you're not drafting the top guy, even so, to just hold off and draft them later.
Yep. Yeah, it's I guess unless you're from the state of Texas or a Cowboys fan, probably waiting on someone like Dak. And, to the point, well, it's interesting to see how Zeke's contract plays out. If, we're assuming that he gets signed, but is there any kind of hangover? Is he off to a slow start? How does it impact Dak? Maybe even more of a reason to stay away or to wait on someone like that. We talked about the Chicago Bears earlier. That's an interesting offense. We had, I think it was Allen Robinson went off the board right after David Montgomery, who I know a lot of people are high on. He had an offense led by Mitch Trubisky, second year in that offense, second year with Matt Nagy as a head coach. We know the innovator that he is. They seem to have added some weapons with guys like Cordarrelle Patterson and others. Alex, how do you feel about Bears players? You being in Chicago, bit of a homer. Love to hear your thoughts around guys like Tariq Cohen, Montgomery, A-Rob, anybody that you love, anybody that you hate.
I think that Chicago is a team that really wins on defense, and last year they were really successful because of that. Mitch Trubisky is an interesting upside player, but he hasn't really shown an ability to be efficient over the course of a season. And I'm worried that there are just too many mouths to feed again with Tariq Cohen and David Montgomery probably being about 50-50 in fantasy points. And then you got Allen Robinson, Taylor Gabriel, Trey Burton, and Anthony Miller, all pretty decent players. So I thought Allen Robinson was drafted too high, to be honest. He didn't really light up fantasy scoring last year, and I'm not really expecting that to change, given that the whole Bears team is basically the same on offense, aside from David Montgomery.
Yeah. Dave, what do you think about these Packers wide receivers? I see Valdez-Scantling coming off the board. We know how great Devontae Adams is, but there's that kind of that number 2 spot in Green Bay. We don't know if Jimmy Graham's going to step up. How are you feeling about those kind of second-tier wideouts in Green Bay looking into this season?
Yeah, I just took MVS. One strategy that I like to employ is if I go heavy on a position early on, and I kind of felt forced into going heavy at running back early, I'll just load up on potentially high upside wide receivers in this case. But the position I'm weakest at in terms of front end talent, I'll load up on potential high upside guys later in the draft. And I think one of the best ways to do that is to take a look at a team who might have a number 1, but the number 2 is the number 2 role is in flux, and you really don't know who it's going to be.
Yep. You
can make an argument for Valdez-Scantling. You can make an argument for Allison. So I think, grabbing one of those guys makes a lot of sense. But there are a lot of teams like that this year where, okay, let's say you don't have a ton of depth. You can go ahead and try and just roll the dice on one of these number 2s, potentially one of the number 1s. A guy that Alex just referenced, Anthony Miller. I grabbed him next. I probably went a little early on him, but he's a very, very good young player who is kind of a post-hype draft pick this year because everyone hyped him up last year. He dealt with some injuries, wasn't that great. Well, Trubisky's got another year under his belt. So basically what I'm trying to do is Keenan Allen's my number 1, and then I went Jeffrey, Fuller, Valdez-Scantling, and Miller. Just load up on the position to give myself an opportunity to hit on 1 or 2 of those guys and make up for the lack of front-end talent.
Yeah, when we get a chance, I'd like to kind of just break down. We're getting into picks, over the century mark as far as picks go. This is that point where you're starting to evaluate those gaps in your team. To your point, if you got to load up on a certain position, what do you got to do to do that? Looking at some of the experts' picks, Evans' team, he went wide out early. He's got a well-balanced team, I think. Loving that Beckham and Tyreek Hill duo. Edelman as a wide receiver 3, in this being a 3 wide receiver league, and then some stability in the running back position with guys like Freeman, Henry, and Austin Eckler. I don't know that he's addressed the QB situation, so he might be someone that's waiting on that QB. Is it someone late like a Dak or Big Ben or Lamar Jackson, what have you? But seems like a well-balanced team and probably executing on his game plan, waiting there. Another team that I liked that I found interesting was Lesean Mccoy. Got some good running backs, wide receivers. I think if I saw correct, snagged up Emmanuel Sanders, and as we sometimes value preseason, sometimes we don't. I know he had a great return to action last week, so people that may be unsure about him, she got him all the way in the 8th round. Emmanuel Sanders on a team where he's the clear number 1 wideout, could garner 10, 15 targets a game, whether you love Joe Flacco or not. that's some, from looking at it, seems like some good value out of a player that's been pretty consistent in fantasy when he's healthy.
Yeah, and I think another interesting trend is who has drafted a quarterback so far and who hasn't. I believe Alex took the first quarterback off the board.
Yeah. Man, I just drafted my second quarterback. I'm just really hoping I have a huge gaping hole at running back, and I'm hoping maybe I can trade Mahomes to someone. If you're watching this video, he's on the trade block. I like Winston this year, and I think Mahomes is a better player for sure, but I don't think he's 6 rounds better. So what I'm going to hope is someone ends up with a quarterback they really don't like, or maybe they get an injury, and then we can do a trade that makes both teams better.
Yeah, 6 of 12 teams have drafted quarterbacks thus far. JJ Zacharyson hasn't because his Twitter handle is late round QB. That makes sense. Christopher Harris hasn't. I still don't have a quarterback. And Roberto Luongo, 19-year career in the NHL. I remember him from the Canucks, but I know he played a whole lot of years with the Florida Panthers as well. He doesn't have a quarterback either. And he took some risks, but some really high. I feel like, I don't know, you tell me, Alex. I feel like he went with the DFS approach, the high upside, high risk, high reward upside. Mark Andrews, Josh Gordon, Kenyon Drake, Rashad Penny, and then he's got David Johnson, Nick Chubb, Amari Cooper, Tyler Boyd, and Mike Williams.
Yeah, I think that Roberto got a lot of players that maybe haven't reached their potential on the teams they're on. Mike Williams and Josh Gordon being some guys that really, really talented. I mean, Josh Gordon could be the best wide receiver potentially. He has that kind of upside. I mean, probably not. The Patriots have a lot of good players, so I don't know if he'll stand out that much. David Johnson as well had a little bit of a disappointing year. Nick Chubb, a guy who, with Duke Johnson gone, maybe he'll get more passing, get more receptions in the PPR league, be a huge player. So I like what Roberto is doing with his team so far.
Let's see. We got some Jets wide receivers. That's an offense that, Alex, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts around the New York Football Jets. But they made some strides at the latter part of last season. New head coach Adam Gase coming in. Us Chicagoans know him pretty well. But you got guys like Robbie Anderson, obviously Le'Veon, Jamison Crowder making the jump over there. Anybody that you like late, perhaps from the Jets?
Yeah, it's a guy that's not off the board yet. But there's no way in hell I'm drafting this guy, so I'll just say him. I think that Chris Herndon, he's suspended for the first 4 games of the season, but he has the potential to be a top 12 tight end this year.
Wow.
And, he had a pretty good season last year, and I think it's only potentially going to get better. So I think Darnold also maybe on the increase after his rookie year. So I think that I value Chris Herndon as someone that's only a round pick.
Yeah, we know an Adam Gase-based offense likes the short passing game, so I could even see even more why a tight end would be valuable in a team like that if you can get past those first 4 games, piecing it together. Let's see, we got 10th round. Some good names still available. One big name just off the board was Lesean McCoy. What are we thinking about the Buffalo Bills this season? Second-year QB, shady latter part of his career. Seems to be a producer though when healthy. Would you touch him? Would you stay away? What are your thoughts on Shady and then the Buffalo Bills staying in the NFC East or AFC?
I like McCoy maybe because there's a decent possibility he gets traded to a different team where he'll be productive. The Bills have made it clear he's not a part of their really long-term plans. So I think that if running back goes down soon, it could very well be McCoy that is now a feature back on a different team, and that could be really productive for fantasy.
Did you just find the replacement for the Houston Texans? Is that what we just heard? It might be a good option for them.
Maybe, yeah. But he kind of overlaps too much with Duke Johnson, so I don't really see a great fit there.
Okay.
Kind of the same skill set. So I think that man, this is a tough pick here. Let me see.
I'm surprised they haven't brought in Jay Ajayi yet. That's what Jay Ajayi is not a great pass catcher, but he can run in between the tackles. He can give you first and second down work. I don't know. He's still not being no one's buying into it either because he's still not being drafted even in like 18 round leagues.
Ajayi seems to be the player for any team that needs a running back. Gosh, that guy had a lot of potential a few years back. Seemed to kind of fall a little bit. Lesean Jackson, there's a old face, new place, but I guess an old place for him. That Philly team, a lot of mouths to feed. Alex, anybody that you're high on or anybody that you're low on over there in Philly?
I think I'm low on Miles Sanders. He was drafted in the 7th round, and I think that it's just a situation where they have shown a tendency to really run out a whole lot of guys. So I think that Miles Sanders, Jordan Howard, Darren Sproles, I think, is in the mix.
Yeah.
And another guy, like there's somebody I can't even keep track of them all.
Wendell Smallwood, Josh Adams.
Yeah.
Keep going. There's always back there.
I think Sanders is going to be the guy. I mean, look, I think he's being drafted speculatively. I've seen him go as high as like late 4th, early 5th, which is kind of scary. But I really wouldn't be surprised if it's a 1-2 punch with Howard and Sanders. Only because there's this idea that Doug Peterson doesn't ever want to doesn't want to use a feature guy. He wants to use a ton of players, but he hasn't really had any good running backs. So I think it's kind of uncharted territory. Like the best they've had is LeGarrette Blount and a gimpy Jay Ajayi. So if Jordan Howard and Miles Sanders both come out there and they're eating up yardage and they're involved heavily and Sanders is putting up big numbers in the passing game, I wouldn't be surprised to see them both get the large majority of volume, but it'll be an interesting situation. I love the Deshaun Jackson pick, by the way, Alex. Not because I'm a Philly guy, but because it's a legitimately good pick. And if he builds chemistry with Deshaun or with Carson Wentz in what I expect to be a very high-powered offense, man, that could be great for best ball. But even in a league like this, you got him in what, the 11th round, 10th, 11th round.
Yeah,
it's solid.
Thanks, man. Yeah, if you want him, he's available.
All right. Hold on. I'll trade you for who do we got here? I'll trade you for Christian Kirk.
Wait, how am I trading 2 players? What are you giving me?
Yeah, you're just going to give me Kirk and Deshaun Jackson.
Man,
for nothing.
Who are you putting on the waiver wire?
I'll give you I'll give you Valdez Scantling. It seems fair. Wait till I draft a defense.
There you go. And that was the next point I was just going to bring up. We are 10 rounds in, and there has not been a defense selected off the board yet.
That's the way to do it.
Alex, what are your thoughts around that? Do you like waiting for a defense? Do you see someone like your hometown Bears or Rams or someone like that where you can count on them week over week at the defense position? Are you trying to lock that position in, or are you someone that likes to wait, play week to week, play matchups? What are your thoughts around that?
So I think that playing matchups is a really viable strategy because a lot of defense is just who are you playing that week.
Yep.
So I think it makes a lot of sense to wait until maybe before the season starts even to pick a defense. But if I had to pick one, I think the Saints is my highest rated defense. I don't see myself drafting them until like the last round probably.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of defenses that are pretty close in overall season projection.
I'm all about streaming them from week to week. I'm with you. But I'll give this away because whatever. It's just the defense. I've been targeting the Ravens pretty heavily if I can get them, because they've got the Dolphins in week 1, just a garbage football team, and then they follow it up in week 2 with the Arizona Cardinals. So I get it. You have this air raid offense, but they're coming into Baltimore. That's a really tough spot. So I think the first 2 weeks of the season for a team like the Ravens is really, really appealing. And then I'll dump them and pick another team up. But when drafting defense, I always try and look to see who they've got in week 1, maybe even week 2, carry them over for another week. But generally never hold on to the same defense throughout the season unless it's a elite defense that can put up numbers every single week. And there aren't that many of them from a fantasy sense because teams that limit yards and points aren't always the best defenses for fantasy purposes. You want teams that get turnovers and sacks and score touchdowns.
Oh, man, you just picked Golden Tate. I didn't even realize he was on the board. I like him so much more than Deshaun Jackson. Like, can I get my pick back?
Has Manny drafted a running back yet?
Yeah, he picked up 3. He's got Lindsey, Breida, and Pollard. Maybe he's thinking Ezekiel Elliott won't play for a bit, so I can see that paying off.
Okay, all right. You're on. Was that real? You like Golden Tate over Jackson, even though he's missing 4 games?
Yeah, because Tate, he could be getting the lion's share of the targets in New York, where Deshaun Jackson, I don't think he really stands out when they got Ertz and Jeffrey on the team. So I think that Tate, if he was playing all 15 games, he'd be drafted way higher.
Okay.
All 15 games of fantasy, I mean.
Russell Wilson off the board. I mean, gosh, wow. Russell Wilson all the way to pick, what is that, 126 or so, 125?
Yeah, 125.
I mean, that's a guy in years past that, depending on the league, has gone sometimes top 5, top 6 rounds, falling down. Alex, how are you feeling about the Seattle offense this season? Anybody that you like? Anybody you don't like?
I think that Carson's a good play, depending on where you get him. But they just run the ball so much that, I'm not bullish on Wilson. He does seem to get an anomalous amount of passing touchdowns relative to the passing yardage, but I'm not going to bank on that for a high pick.
Yep. Yeah, and Cam Newton right behind him seems to be a QB trend taking off right now. Anybody that waited is snagging with somebody up. Cam, if he can get healthy for week 1, the last report that I read is that if it was a game week, he'd be practicing. But, it's preseason. The reports you kind of have to take with a grain of salt. So we shall see. Interested to see how Cam's injury progresses as the season goes on. A guy that's been banged up year over year. And a lot of people I know are riding the Christian McCaffrey train, or even, the wideouts they have there, Samuel and Moore. On that note, Alex, there's a few teams like Carolina just mentioned where there's Moore, there's Samuel. We talked about Minnesota where there's Diggs, there's Thielen. A lot of these teams where there's 2 wideouts going kind of close to each other. Are there one that you like where maybe whether it's Seattle, comparing the Baldwin to, Curse, anybody that in particular wideouts when there's those 2 together, it can be tough. I don't know if you have a way of kind of discerning between the 2, if it's targets, if it's yards, touchdowns. I don't know, it can be tough to figure that out. I don't know if you have a way that you approach that.
The metric that I'm really looking for is when someone's on the field, how often are they targeted? And I think that you have a lot of guys that are receivers that played a full season and put up decent numbers, but they're just not targeted enough to really be viable. But then you have guys like Chris Godwin, who I'm really bullish on, who because of Deshaun Jackson and Adam Humphries, along with Mike Evans, he didn't see the field for as many snaps as his talent warranted. So I think that he could see a big bump in usage this year, even though Mike Evans is going to be the number 1 receiver.
There goes Dak Prescott, 130th.
There's some happy Cowboys fan. Who's he going to throw it to besides Amari Cooper? Do we feel good about, it was like his name's slipping my my mind right now. He was the rookie last season for them.
Michael Gallup.
Michael Gallup. There it is. I knew it would come to me. Some people were projecting him as a big sleeper last year. He didn't really come on, until the very end, kind of sporadically. But Alex, do you think Dak has enough weapons to go around besides Zeke? Do you believe in Jason Witten being an actual weapon, or is he just there for name and notoriety?
I'm kind of intrigued by Witten coming back out of retirement, but I don't think he's necessarily fantasy valuable unless you just don't have a tight end and you're on the waiver wire. I think that Gallup and Randall Cobb, new addition to the offense, they just aren't going to get enough targets to really be relevant because Prescott and Dallas, as you're saying, they have Cooper, they have Elliott, they're getting most of the production. And it's going to be scraps that everyone else is fighting for. Of course, maybe Elliott won't even play. So that analysis could be totally off. That's what makes this game so interesting.
Yeah, the whole situation with there's so many of these holdouts from season to season. When it comes to Melvin Gordon, drafting him, he's going in like the 5th round. So if he plays, you've got a steal. You've got the best pick in the draft if Melvin Gordon plays. With Ezekiel Elliott, you got him 7th, right, Alex?
Yeah.
7th. If you get him 7th and he plays, that's a huge value because he was being drafted 3rd or 4th. I saw him go as high as 2nd. But if he doesn't play, you're just going to have to load up on depth at the running back position. Do you feel good about him playing?
I do. I think, he's such a big part of the Dallas offense. They're going to be a bad team if he's not on the field. I think he has the leverage in the situation where I think Gordon maybe is more replaceable and therefore has a higher chance of sitting out or being traded.
It's really quickly. What's really interesting.
I just auto drafted. That sucks. All right.
Oh, did you? Eric Ebron was like the 6th tight end a week ago. He was ranked as like your 6th tight end. Now we are 138 picks in, and a defense was just drafted before him.
Well, it was by accident, so you gotta give me some.
I didn't see that. I didn't know that was you.
When I timed out and picked Chris Thompson, it just put me on auto draft. So
I didn't know that was you.
Hopefully, on the next show, that people will take that into account before really reaming me for that selection.
And it just so happened to default to your Chicago Bears. Funny that it worked out that way.
And Eric Ebron went immediately after the very next pick to Roberto. Look at that.
It's funny because I'm actually higher on Jack Doyle than Ebron. I don't know about you guys, but I think that Doyle he was on the field more when both of them were healthy. So I'll be really interested to see how that plays out.
No, you're right. Like he was injured for what, like 9 or 10 games. Ebron, when Doyle was healthy, Ebron was outside of some touchdowns, which are hard to predict anyway. Ebron was very underwhelming. He only averaged like 4 targets per game when Jack Doyle was healthy.
I suppose I gotta give Luongo credit here though, because Doyle doesn't have the best injury history, and if Doyle goes down, Ebron could be a good tight end this year. So right. I think it's a good late round pick. And
you're getting Ebron at the 139th pick. Definitely not reaching on him.
Yeah.
Speaking of tight ends, and I didn't see it, but there was a guy, Jaylen Samuels, that was dual eligible last year, tight end and running back in many leagues. I thought I saw he's just a running back this year. Is that confirmed?
Yeah, just a running back. And some people, there's actually some appeal there. He was drafted already, because he's in a backfield where it's very possible that maybe James Conner doesn't end up being a ridiculous workhorse that he was last year. So Jaylen Samuels is actually a very interesting pick this year. I'm pretty fascinated to see what happens with him.
Yeah, even just from a handcuff perspective, right? Connor, and it seems to be in Pittsburgh, they give the bulk to one person. And if, Connor's getting 25, 30 touches a game, there's a good chance he's going to get dinged up along the way. So someone like Samuels could have some good value in an offense that puts up points no matter what.
I'm liking this trash talking we're seeing in the chat. I don't know if you saw this, but Christopher Harris just called out Manny for his pick of the Los Angeles D. Things are getting pretty spicy in here.
Oh, I love it. Christopher Harris is going to be on with myself and Alex right after the draft, right after our current show, for a draft recap for this Awesemo Celeb Charity League. You'll want to stick around for that for sure.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what he thinks of all these teams that have been drafted so far.
Yeah. JJ said he wasn't expecting me to take a second quarterback there, and he wanted Drew Brees. I hear you, JJ. The problem is my starting quarterback is a little bit sketchy, so I had to do something.
You bring up an interesting point, an interesting strategy that I think a lot of players consider when they're going into these late round picks is, do you draft the backup QB? Alex, I don't know, if you take someone like Patrick Mahomes, are you just riding that person all year, or are you snagging up someone late just in case? What are your thoughts around just that approach to a QB position? Is it one and go, or is it, hey, I want a couple options here?
So I think what I was thinking there is that this roster isn't going to be the roster I'm going to roll out for a whole year. And I thought Mahomes and Winston at the time I drafted them were the best players on the board with respect to their positional value. So that's why I'm saying I'm really banking on a trade to make that pick benefit me over the course of the season.
Gotcha. Mitchell Trubisky off the board. That's interesting, I guess, at this point. A guy that runs a little bit, throws a little bit. We've talked about the Bears' offense. He finished pretty good last year overall, and interesting to see where he lands. I'm just a homer, so who am I kidding? I'm going to talk about all the Bears.
Yeah, that was Luongo's second quarterback. He drafted Cam Newton first. That's a spot where, much like I said with drafting Lamar Miller, where I want to have a little bit of protection at the position, even though I don't value it that high. Probably wants to have a decent enough backup behind Cam Newton in the event that injury keeps lingering. Because with Cam Newton right now, Ian Rappaport just tweeted moments ago that it looks like he's on track to play in week 1. But at this point, it's really hard to know whether or not you're going to have a healthy Cam Newton at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, and Cam's a guy that he's shown that he can play through injuries. So if you're getting someone at 75, 80%, is that someone that you want in your starting lineup every week?
Probably not. No, because he showed last year that when injured, he couldn't throw downfield. Now, it's a different injury this season. I totally understand that. But I'm still skeptical. I think now, keep in mind where he drafted Cam Newton is perfectly reasonable. I mean, he got him in the where are we here? Let me see. He got him in the 11th round. So, you're not really risking all that much. But yeah, I think with certain guys, I might not like them, but that means I don't like them where their ADP is. If they're if you don't like somebody, but then they fall 4 rounds past where they should, not saying Newton did, but in general, or 3 rounds past where they should, it makes it a lot easier to take that chance.
Yeah, I got a comment on what Evan Silva is doing here. He has 6 running backs so far. I suppose Christopher Harris also has 6. What do you guys think about that?
Let me look at the team and see if they're doing what I'd mentioned earlier. Did Evan go wide receiver heavy to start?
He went Odell Beckham, Tyreek Hill, Edelman in the 4th round.
Yeah.
And Henry in rounds 3 and 5.
Yeah. I mean, if I had to guess, he's doing the same strategy I'd mentioned earlier, where you want to get as much potential upside at your weakest position, and just hope that some of these guys hit. And I think if you look at what he's done, I like it a lot. Chase Edmunds is a talented back. I mean, the workload is going to be scarce to start the season, even though he should be involved. Madison behind the oft-injured Dalvin Cook, Jaylen Samuels behind Connor. It's a pretty smart move, man. And then, of course, Austin Eckler. So he's got 4 guys that might not get a lot of work at all, or he has 4 guys who could all become very involved in their respective offenses. Nice work. Oh, and Darrell Henderson, too? Jeez. Yeah. He has 7 running backs.
I didn't see who it was. Jacoby Brissett off the board.
Wow.
I'm a little surprised he was drafted.
Yeah, that he must Spags must have quite a bit of faith in Frank Reich's offense. Wow. That is something. Yeah. Evan Silva was 7 running backs, and Dak Prescott as his starting quarterback. I think Christopher Harris too, like you pointed out, Alex. He's got Sonia Michelle, Marlon Mack, Tariq Cohen, Dion Lewis, Naeem Hines, and Damien Harris.
Yeah, I might need to call some of these guys up and ask for a trade because they're taking all these speculative picks, and some of them are going to hit.
What we see every year, there's always late round receivers, late round rookies, just in general, that always play a huge role in their respective teams and your fantasy team success or lack thereof, but mostly success down the road. Alex, are there any rookies in particular, whether it be position or team, doesn't matter, that you're high on, that you think, hey, maybe not starting right away, someone that you might get in a lower draft value but could play huge dividends second half of the year?
Yeah, I mean, that's an area where maybe that's not my expertise. That would be a situation where someone who follows the game year-round would really have an advantage. And I think that being a daily fantasy guy, maybe that's one area where I got to work on. And Evan and Christopher Harris drafting all these backup running backs are really showing me that I'm undervaluing these guys.
Yeah, interesting point. I think especially a lot of these teams that went wide receiver early, see that they're loading up on RBs, position that, injuries are a big part of it. So yeah, interesting to see their approach to the position and their approach to drafting.
So my last 2 picks coming up, Manny, JJ, and then I've got 2 picks. I'm legitimate. So Alex, do you draft 2 tight ends? Are you going to draft a backup tight end?
I drafted 3 just because I'm going to try to use these guys as trade bait. Hopefully someone will have a tight end that they like, and I'll be able to get some value out of these guys. But I did draft them where I thought they had value over their round.
Right. For sure. Yeah. I generally draft 2 of them. Not the deepest benches here, but I do feel like sometimes when you look at who's available, some of these tight ends just have, seemingly higher upside than some of the other players that are on the board, which is, I think reason to target them. I mean, right now you've got guys like Tom Brady and Devin Funchess and just not a lot of talent here. So I'm going to go with TJ Hawkinson. A little bit of preseason hype there. And he seemed to have a really strong connection with Matthew Stafford early on. It's a little concerning that Stafford was never able to get Eric Ebron completely involved, but and rookie tight ends, generally speaking, aren't very good. But you know what? As my last overall pick, I'm all right with it.
Why not? Right? Go for it.
That's right. There it is. My team is done, and we've got 10 picks to go before this draft is in the books.
The home stretch. So do you draft a kicker?
No, I did not include. I set this league up. I did not include a kicker.
Man, I was hoping to wow everyone with my Greg Zuerlein pick. I think that
Greg the leg.
Yeah.
Were you going to draft him? Were you going to take him like early?
No, I mean like 13th, 14th round, just because I think that Los Angeles kicks more field goals than other teams, and he's going to, over the course of a season, accumulate more points than any other kicker by a decent margin. So I have him as draftable.
Beautiful. Would you take him over Tucker?
Yes. He's my top kicker.
Okay. You don't see a lot of kicker analysis, but you know what? It is a position that can win and lose you weeks.
Absolutely, especially some of the names that you just mentioned. Tucker in Baltimore, it seems like every year he's a consistent player.
He's literally the most accurate kicker ever. I mean, he is that good. He's remarkable. But I think Alex makes a point that you could speak to on a broader scale. When I'm on the fence between maybe two players, one of them might, be marginally more talented than the other. But what if one team is just a much better offense that's going to find the end zone more? And I think that you see that quite often where a player might be okay, but he's on a team that's lousy and they can't get into football. I think a perfect example would be like Lesean McCoy. You said if he went to another team, maybe he still has something left in the tank. It's very possible that he does, but what are those numbers going to look like in Buffalo? What are Kenyon Drake's numbers going to look like? Sometimes talent doesn't get you there.
Yeah. I think those guys you mentioned are definitely ones that aren't reaching their full potential, like Drake. They just never run him out there enough, and he has the receiving capability to be a really good player if he got traded at some point before the end of the season.
Last few picks coming in, defenses, tight ends, filling up the roster. Greg Olson getting picked. At some point, he's going to be in that Jason Witten category, but it sounds like there's still a spot for him on somebody's roster. Giovanni Bernard, there's an interesting name to be around this late. He seems like a guy who every year produces, and Mixon battled some injury issues in the past. I'm kind of surprised to see him around this late. What do you think, Alex?
I'm happy to pick him up. Not thrilled, but I think that if Mixon goes down to an injury, Bernard will be very valuable. And I think I might need that if I'm going to win this league, honestly.
Do you think there's value with a guy like Bernard with Mixon in the lineup? Him taking those third downs, PPR back? Or do you think because he's on the team like the Bengals, stay away?
I don't think I would put him on my team unless I was just in total desperation mode. I think my move probably will be to try to pick up a running back on the trade block before week 1. Of course, I have to get the cooperation of some of these other guys, so we'll see how much they like their teams.
Yeah. Kareem Hunt just got taken, second to last pick. I like that one. If you could let him sit, why not, right? Could have some good production back half of the year.
Yeah, I think you're right. Especially, if Chubb has some sort of injury, Kareem Hunt, we've seen he can be one of the best running backs in the league when he's the feature back. All right, so all the picks are in the books. What do you guys think?
Yeah, wow, it's a lot to take in.
I hate having the first pick. I'll tell you that much.
Always the worst.
But we will recap it. Yes, we will.
Yeah, that'll be fun. So we're doing another stream after this one, so make sure to go to Awesemo YouTube channel and find the link. And I'm really excited to break this down with Christopher Harris and Laffy as well.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, good luck, guys.
Thanks, man. Hoping to take on some charity money here.
$1,500. $100 to first place. Want to thank everybody, including Christopher Harris, Roberto Luongo, Lisa Ann, Evan Silva, Pat Mayo, JJ Zachariason. Am I missing anyone? No, I'm not talking about our guys. I think I got them all.
I mean, these are some of the biggest names in fantasy, so I'm really excited to have them on board. JJ, Christopher, Roberto, Lisa, Evan, and Pat Mayo. And we did leave out our boy, Manny. I mean, I know you did the show with him, and he's an awesome radio, but
you're right.
Technically a fantasy cruncher guy, and we really appreciate him as well.
Absolutely, Manny. Please accept my apology. We're so close. I just assumed like whatever. But, no RB Manny Laura. We love him to death, and I think you'll be seeing a lot more of him this year. So get hyped. It's been fun. Myself, Alex Baker, Christopher Harris coming up next. Don't go anywhere. Stick around on YouTube. The post-draft analysis is coming up next. Awesemo.com, Celebrity Charity League, first annual in the books. We'll see you in a couple minutes.
All right, guys.